Hi, my name is Beth Burgess from Smiles Recovery Coaching, and in this video we're going to talk about pain versus pleasure when it comes to addiction recovery. Now, some people may think that you need a lot of pain to actually recover from addiction. So it's true, a lot of people have like a rock bottom where they basically get to a point where they've lost a lot in life. You know, their addiction has really caused them some serious issues. Maybe their health, their relationships, or their family, or whatever. All that's kind of, out the window. So they get to a point where they're like, you know what, I really have to recover now because I've lost so much, I can't go on like this. So I think that's a fair point. I don't think you necessarily have to get to that point, but a lot of people do, and it's that final kind of push to get recovery. So I think that's important. But the problem is with that approach is that, so maybe like you're sober a few months, you go along, you repair some of your health, maybe you're not as ill, maybe you make it up to your family, you start doing those things. So you get, you've done all that, why would you now stay sober? So this is what happens with people. They sometimes relapse because they've lost all of that, all the bad stuff, and they're just kind of like, well, there's no momentum now. There's no momentum to go on and stay sober because they've got everything back that they lost. So this is why it's important in order to have a long and sustained recovery to actually build happiness and pleasure in recovery. So that's sort of setting goals for yourself, that's sorting out what you want to do in life when you're sober. And I think as well, I will bring this up as well, there are a lot of kind of shame-based treatments out there as well, which I think really don't help. Because actually shame is one of these things that often perpetuates addiction. So does low self-esteem. So for example, I know for me, during my final kind of hurrah, I could call it that, my final like horrendous relapse rather, of drinking, I basically often, when I'd had like a drink, I'd continue then drinking because I was ashamed of what had happened, and I wanted to kind of hide that from myself, that feeling, that horrible guilt, shame feeling. So I'd just continue. I'd continue to drink, so that I didn't have to listen to my own head telling myself how rubbish I was. I didn't have to face up to it. So that would sort of perpetuate it. The same with low self-esteem. Actually, some of these treatments that sort of, kind of like make you feel embarrassed and ashamed about your addiction and stuff. It's not really fair actually, because it's not your fault anyway. Addiction isn't like a matter of willpower. It's a malfunctioning dopamine system, which kind of tends to. I mean, it's a bit more complex than that, but basically, it's not a choice. It's something physical. It's something that's caused by external factors. So basically, there's no reason actually to be ashamed if you've got an addiction. I do believe in being very honest and very real about where your addiction's taken you and how dreadful it has got. But I don't see any reason to kind of start pointing fingers at people. There's no point in that. So what's the alternative then? So I mentioned earlier that I think one of the things which helps you sustain recovery is becoming grateful for sobriety, realising all the great things that you can have in your life now that you're sober, and starting to work towards them. So yeah, this is why I have written a book, The Happy Addict. Now this is basically about how to be happy in recovery, something which I don't actually think is touched on very much. People tend to focus on the pain and all the sort of basic stuff you need to do to get better, which is important in order to sort of get you over that, to that point where you want to seek help. But at the same time, people seem to neglect the fact that actually, recovery is a wonderful place if you make it that way. If you work on your recovery, if you start doing things to kind of expand your horizons. Now they say all this stuff like, when you first get sober, you have to rebuild a life, as in go and find other things to do, because you've got a lot of time on your hands when you stop drinking, because you don't realise how much you actually spent like just tied up in the addiction and getting drink or drugs and recovering from it. So you do end up with a lot of time, but I don't think it's just about like, oh okay, well I'll start playing tennis or something. I think it's about finding new meaning in your life and actually finding out what your goals were, find out like who you actually were supposed to be in the first place before you got wrapped up in the addiction. you know, what your purpose is, you know, what you really want to do, what makes you, you know, what kind of sets you alight, really. And if you've got a life like that, it'd be very hard to relapse, believe me, because you'll be doing things all the time that, you know, you need to be sober for anyway, and you'll love life so much, so why would you go back to drinking? So that's a really important point, is if you do want to get, like, properly get into the momentum of being sober forever, it's important to kind of, you know, start building happiness in life, start growing your self-esteem, not knocking it down, you know, moving away from the guilt and the shame, and actually creating a life that you're proud of. You know, that's it for me. Anyway, I will pop the link to the book below. You can buy it on Amazon or on Waterstones. I'll stick the Amazon link below, I think, because it's easiest. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them below, and I will speak to you soon. Thanks, bye.